these stories will you be talking about tomorrow? So breathless it takes your breath away. Why the future ex-governor of Alaska, the panic of hyperventilation enveloping her every word, quits while insulting quitters.
It may be tempting and more comfortable to just kind of keep your head down and plod along and appease those who are demanding, hey, just sit down and shut up. But that's a worthless, easy path out. That's the quitter's way out.
Inside the decision to quit to pursue a, quote, higher calling, while boss tweet-worthy rumors swirl about the construction of her house, or embezzlement, or more ethics investigations, or, best of all, that she's quitting to run for president, but doesn't want to make the people of Alaska pay her salary while she does so. Which is, of course, what she made them do while she was running for vice president. Cue the basketball point guard analogy.
She knows exactly when to pass the ball so that the team can win. And that is what I'm doing, keeping our eye on the ball.
Passing it, then running off the court, out of the gym, through the parking lot, and out of town. Pausing only to threaten to sue a blogger for insisting gossip about her was only gossip. The threat from its target, Shannon Moore. Her political future, if any, with her Vanity Fair profiler, Todd Purdum. And if this is the end, the comedic highlights, and a fond farewell. Also,
Katie, I'd like to use one of my lifelines.
Good evening from New York. There had perhaps not been such a combination of terror, panic, anger, urgency, and hyperventilation in a political speech in this country since the famous "You won't have Dick Nixon to kick around" address from November 1962. Our fifth story in the countdown, if that one is still resonating nearly 47 years later, of course, Sarah Palin's bizarre resignation speech on the Friday of the 4th of July weekend, the ultimate bad news dump day, would still echo. And one question reverberates across the land. What the hell was that about? Making South Carolina Governor Mark Sanford's rambling admission of having a mistress in Argentina sound Shakespearean in its organization and cadence, on Friday, Governor Palin dropping the bombshell that she would be leaving office before the end of the month, that she would not, superfluous postscript here, not be running for re-election. All of this information coming only after she had laundry listed all of her purported accomplishments as governor and complained about the numerous ethics complaints that have been lodged against her.
Over the past 9 months, I've been accused of all sorts of frivolous ethics violations, such as holding a fish in a photograph or wearing a jacket with a logo on it and answering reporters' questions. Every one of these, though, all 15 of the ethics complaints have been dismissed. We have won, but it hasn't been cheap. Todd and I, we're looking at more than $500,000 in legal bills just in order to set the record straight.
Record purportedly straightened. Let the dead fish analogies commence.
I think a problem in our country today is apathy. It would be apathetic to just kind of hunker down and go with the flow. We're fishermen. We know that only dead fish go with the flow. So I choose for my state and for my family more freedom to progress all the way around so that Alaska may progress. I will not seek re-election as governor.
So she can catch a salmon in her teeth. In case you were wondering, leaving office before one's term has expired would not be the same thing as quitting.
Life is too short to compromise time and resources. And though it may be tempting and more comfortable to just kind of keep your head down and plod along and appease those who are demanding, hey, just sit down and shut up. But that's a worthless, easy path out. That's the quitter's way out.
That's right. Winners never quitters never quitters. We rejoined Governor Palin already in progress.
I thought about, well, how much fun some governors have as lame ducks. They maybe travel around their state, travel to other states, maybe take their overseas international trade missions. So many politicians do that. And then I thought, that's what's wrong. Many just accept that lame duck status and they hit the road, they draw a paycheck, they kind of milk it. And I'm not going to put Alaskans through that. I promised efficiencies and effectiveness. That's not how I'm wired. I'm not wired to operate under the same old politics as usual. I promised that 4 years ago, and I meant it.
If by 4 years ago you mean 2.5 years ago, what's 16 months or so when you've been sworn to support and defend? Perhaps it's better that Governor Palin was point guard on her high school basketball team instead of, say, scorekeeper. Her nickname had been Sarah Barracuda.
Let me go back quickly to a comfortable analogy for me, and that's sports, basketball. And I use it because you are naive if you don't see a full court press from the national level picking away right now. A good point guard, here's what she does. She drives through a full court press, protecting the ball, keeping her head up because she needs to keep her eye on the basket. And she knows exactly when to pass the ball so that the team can win.
The governor, who once wanted to be a sportscaster in Bristol, Connecticut, tweeting over the weekend about now wanting to join her family in Bristol Bay, Alaska, where her husband Todd has long worked seasonally as a commercial fisherman. Quote, "Grateful Todd left fishing grounds to join me this weekend, but now he's back slaying salmon and working the kids at the site, anxious to join him." Earlier, she had posted that she looked forward to joining the work crew for one day picking fish. In a July 4th message posted to her Facebook account, the governor still sounding like someone with aspirations to higher office, to quote, "Though it's honorable for countless others to leave their positions for a higher calling and without finishing a term, of course we know by now, for some reason, a different standard applies to the decisions I make." Back in the backyard in Wasilla, Governor Palin having alluded to the reasons and explanations behind her decision.
And it hurts to make this choice, but I'm doing what's best for Alaska, and I have explained why. Though I think of the saying on my parents' refrigerator, a little magnet that says, "Don't explain, your friends don't need it, and your enemies won't believe you anyway." But I've given my reasons.
Reasons? She gave reasons somewhere in there? Governor Palin was the subject of an illuminating article in this month's Vanity Fair. It came from Wasilla, written by the magazine's national editor, Todd Purdum, who joins us now. Todd, good evening. Thanks for your time tonight.
Good evening, Keith.
Before we start to try to figure out why, she claimed right there in that last clip we played that she said why in that speech. Did she? Did you hear it?
Well, she kind of gave you an a la carte menu of whys. I mean, you could pick she was tired of the game. You could pick that she was better for Alaska. You could pick that she was going to affect change, presumably at the national level from outside of government. So I think the thing that confused so many of her listeners was that she didn't give a reason. She threw all the cards up in the air and said, pick your reason.
You wrote in the article about the senior staff in the McCain campaign. I'll quote the article. "They all know that if their candidate, a 72-year-old cancer survivor, had won the presidency, the vice presidency would be in the hands of a woman who lacked the knowledge, the preparation, the aptitude, and the temperament for the job." This was, of course, one among many searing paragraphs in there. Are we confident that the release of your article and then the release of those internal emails with Nicole Wallace, were these all coincidences of timing, or is it possible that this sequence last week was in fact interrelated and not just sequential?
Oh, I think it's all coincidences. I mean, I think my article was probably one of the furthest things from Governor Palin's mind when she made her remarks the other day. And she pointed out that this has been under consideration by her for quite a while. What did stun people expected she might not run for re-election. I think people were genuinely stunned that she quit. But I think one of the things the article points out is just how deep and enduring the divide is within her own Republican Party over her skills and over her future. And maybe to the small degree that the article, reminded everybody that these issues are not resolved, that could have played some small part.
You also wrote about the difficulties the governor had buckling down to study originally for the interview with Katie Couric, among other problems that occurred in her relationship with the media, also for her debate with then Senator Biden. Andrea Mitchell reported, as this was happening on Friday, that this is it, that she is, no matter what she's talking about, she's not going to run for political office again. Was all this just too complicated for her, or too something? Are we missing some fundamental part of this equation that she knew she was talking about Friday and the rest of us just don't see?
I think in some ways, she liked the ice cream and she didn't like the vegetables. I mean, she didn't like doing the dull, grinding work of getting acquainted with issues. People in Alaska told me that she was very good in the first 15 minutes of any meeting on a policy that she cared about. After that, her mind would drift off. So I think for her, it just wasn't any fun anymore. And it was very hard for her to govern effectively. The legislature was totally at her throat in a way. Former allies had turned against her. So I think she was just sick of the game.
Rush Limbaugh had this statement that he issued while on vacation, necessarily leading the Republican Party. I guess you'd have to make that sort of statement. But he defended her and said, among other things, he does not think this would preclude her from running for office down the road, and that would include the presidency in 12. But obviously, short-term office holders have won or at least sought the presidency. But can you really walk out essentially in the midpoint of a governorship without giving a compelling, easy-to-understand reason why, and then expect to be taken seriously for the White House, especially if it was questionable to begin with, that she was being taken seriously before resigning?
Yeah, I don't think it precludes her trying to run, and a person like Rush Limbaugh or Pat Buchanan has wielded great influence over the internal debates of their party without holding an office. I think it raises an awful lot of questions about whether she'd be a good candidate. And when people talked about the comparative lack of experience that Barack Obama had in elective office, by the end of that campaign for the presidency, he had done something no one in history had ever done before. He had presided over, he had run the biggest, most expensive presidential campaign in history, and he'd shown that he did a pretty darn good job of it. So I think what Sarah Palin has yet to prove is that she can really run anything, run it effectively, and run it consistently and stick with it till the job is done.
Having gone into such depth to profile her,